Welcome to the Bonsai Stuff podcast. Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and let's talk about one of the least sexy things ever with bonsai in this episode of the podcast. We're neck deep in repotting, and if you haven't started yet, you are starting very, very soon. But it's also the depths of winter. It's nice and cold and damp and wet, and things just aren't growing, so it's all very, very quiet around the place. So what I want to talk about today in the episode of the podcast is root rot. That's right. Like I said, one of the least sexy things we can talk about, but probably one of the most impactful and problematic conditions that happens with our trees that we need to be on the front foot of. So at this time of the year, when you're repotting, you can identify it, but it's more than that. It's not just identifying that you've got root rot, and it's how to treat it. Obviously, that's a nice way to go forward. But the big one is really for us how to prevent it. And I want to run through things like the common causes for it, where we can see it frequenting a lot of different trees in the same collection, and there's a collective reason for that. So root rot for me is one of those ones that at this time of the year I look at and it stinks. Literally, it stinks. I can smell it before I can see it. And when you start to get these issues identify with trees, little problems that pop up on trees, quite often around this time of the year, and early in spring, you get to see it as well. It's linked to the fact that the trees have got root rot, and their base, their engine, the whole driving force for the tree is really starting to struggle and go backwards. So we need to take steps to identify it. So it is an important thing. It's not one that you're going to race home and tell your family and friends about that you listen to on the Bonsai Stuff podcast today. But I'm really hopeful that this is one of those practical ones where you can make changes and understand why we do things certain ways with our trees to make sure that we can avoid this as much as possible and build into your maintenance structure certain events and timings on things that will help you get across the line to ensure that root rot is one of those things that may pop its ugly head up every now and then, but it's not regular. It's not something that you see 2 out of 3 repots, because that's when it's like that, there's serious problems. So let's talk about root rot. All right, so let's start with what is root rot. Root rot is pretty much self-explanatory. It's where part of the root system of your bonsai, or the tree in the pot that you've got in front of you, starts to decay, starts to die off and rot, and it leads to other nasty things getting into your trees, fungal issues, that sort of thing. But really, the ancillary stuff that happens is not the focus. I just want to purely focus on part of the strength of the tree, the root system, the thing that really pushes and maintains the foliage mass that you've got is injured, is damaged. And it's to the extent you don't know. Extreme cases, it can be disastrous, but in most cases it might be limited to a certain percentage of the root mass that's been affected. You might find, for instance, it's in the lower section of the root ball that stays in a wet state for a long period of time. That could be where you find the problem, but it might, depending on a few factors like drainage on the pot, how long it's been since it's been repotted, then you might find that it's actually crept up to maybe the core of the root system as well. It maybe wasn't opened up as much as what it should have been last couple of repots, so it's got like a brick in there, stayed wet, and then it starts to die off. So it's caused by, or it comes about when there's excess water or moisture in the pot, and there's not enough oxygen exchange, so there's not enough that air-water transfer. So the water's got to be able to pass through, and then those voids or that space where the water was, you need to have some kind of air mass in there. So I'll call it soil air, because it's not air that we breathe. It's not generally higher in carbon dioxide, but it's a drier area, so it's not constantly wet. And this is part of the reason why when you go away on holidays, you leaving your tree, certain varieties, in trays of water can be really destructive to the tree, as opposed to a normal watering cycle where it sort of comes in the top of the pot, drains its way through, and then escapes out the bottom holes, and it sucks the air back through as that moisture drains out. So that's what keeps a happy, healthy root system. So you can identify root rot by generally taking the tree out of the pot, which is, really common at this time. Lots of messages, seen it firsthand. I was repotting 3 trees for a customer, as I said in the intro, and 2 of the 3 had root rot on them. So as soon as you pop them out of the pot, there's this rotten stink. There's a smell. I actually got some of this rotten water spilt down the leg of my pants, and my pants stink as well. I think I'm going to burn them. It's rotten. It's so easy to identify root rot in a enclosed space, even not an enclosed space. You can still smell it. It's not the most pleasant smell that I've ever come across, and it also identifies itself being black roots. Normally your roots on your tree will be a browny colour, and right now at this time of the year you should start seeing trees wake up from dormancy and see some nice white tips on those, the new roots starting to form. But the root system pretty much should be a browny colour. Maybe some varieties, it's not for all of them, of course. There's always going to be an exception to that rule, but in general you should find a browny type root, and they should have, again, depending on the variety, they should have a nice sweet scent to them. Like, for instance, a radiata pine. When you cut the foliage on the radiata, it gets that beautiful smell about it. And same when I work on the root system for a radiata. A happy, healthy tree gives you that same sort of fragrant smell. So when you smell rot and you look at the root system and you see just fine black roots, then I'm almost confident 100% that you've got root rot in that root ball. And it might only be in one little part of it. It might be more than that. But it also, if you want to check the root system itself, often the rotten roots will just sort of crumble. So you get them. It's like a branch above the soil that's died and has dried out, and you sort of just touch it and the thing breaks off immediately. Well, roots, because they're wet, it won't snap off, but you'll be able to squish it and it'll just break in your fingers. So that's pretty much how you can identify it below the soil. Above the soil, overwatering of our trees, as I've talked about before, in spring and in autumn, like the yellowing of the foliage is generally a good sign that there's overwatering. But as deciduous trees are dormant at this stage, there's no telltales when it comes to that side. If it's a conifer, there might be browning of the tips. Of juniper, you might find that you're yellowing and browning off on the tips when the trees are staying too wet. Or a pine, you'll start seeing that sort of an issue occur as well when it's overwatered. So when it's staying too wet, you're getting the same sort of feel. So it's the best way for me to do it is, if in doubt, if you're looking at a bench full of trees and you look at them all and go, geez, they've dried out nicely, they're due for water, that one there is still wet, have a look at it, because there'll be something about that tree as to why it's retaining water that is going to cause you a problem, and you're going to get this root rot come into your trees. So if we just start thinking about a few of the common causes for root rot, we go back to what it is. It's the excess water being retained in the pot. So really simple, really basic one. The drainage of the pot may not be sufficient. Or if it was sufficient, let's say a couple of years ago, then the drainage holes on that pot may be blocked with roots. You might find that the water just can't get out of there. You might find that the pot that you've purchased, some of the cheaper pots, they come from a mould, and you might find on the inside they dip down towards the edges, and it creates like a pooling factor where the water just can't, when the tree's not taking it up during a growing period, that water just can't escape. So it stagnates in there, and once it starts to stagnate, it starts to rot. The roots that are coming into contact in it starts to spread through the tree. So you can find that it can be definitely based on your pot, but it could also be that it's the particles inside the pot are retaining too much water. Now, talked in the last episode about being brave and moving and changing soil mixes and stuff like that. If you ever want an excuse or a reason to justify why you've changed a soil mix, use the words root rot because a lot of those organic mixes, they are notorious for holding the moisture. The finer the particles, the more surface area you're going to have. The more surface area you're going to have, the greater the retention of water you're going to have. So when you've got a highly organic mix or you've got superfine particles in the mix, you're going to be retaining a hell of a lot of water, which means it's going to compress over time as well, which means the soil air, that oxygen exchange that we talked about earlier, that air-water balance, is not going to exist. It's just going to stay wetter and wetter and wetter. And you're going to come across the issue where those fine particles just will not, for 3 months of the year, just will not dry out, no matter what. And often I see it when trees have come from nursery stock and they're yet to be repotted. You sort of have no real idea of how long it's been since they've been repotted. Nurseries generally use a potting mix, which is a cheaper, more affordable. It's not like what we use, pumice-based potting mix for bonsai, so which is fine. That's the way it is. But that explains to you that the water is going to be held up in some of these nursery trees until you can get in there and fix it. It's always because of that finer soil mix. So if you're at this stage where you're thinking about changing your soil mix, or you've started, going down the path of repotting with your existing soil and thinking, no, I'm not going to change it this year, I'll do it next year. Just have a think about it, because this rot can really set your trees back. If you think about what happens above the soil is going to happen below the soil as well. When you get that rot down below, then look at the foliage above the tree and think, okay, well, which one of these branches is going to come off to counteract that balance of root system to foliage mass, because it'll happen. A tree with poor root system cannot support a massive foliage structure. It just can't. So, and this is where, branch will grow, branch will die. Roots will grow, roots will die. It's a balancing act that the tree does naturally to ensure that it can live forever, because it can't overload too much foliage and then not be able to get enough water and transpire through the tree system, because the root system just can't handle it. So you're looking at things like overwatering. Now, I know it's winter and we've got rain. It comes consistently. So it's like, well, you're saying that I'm overwatering. I haven't watered for a week, but the tree's still wet. Yep, that's the way it is. So we've got to work out, how do we get the water out of the tree before we repot, or what do we do? How do we help the tree in its current state to get through to the point that I can repot it? And if you're in the northern hemisphere and you're hearing me talk about winter, and you guys are smack in the middle of summer or heading towards your autumn, your fall period, well then these things, part of the tips and tricks I'm going to talk about in the next section, will definitely be of assistance to you throughout that period as well. So overwatering, you've got blocked drainage, you've got fine particles that are retaining moisture as well. So another thing, if you listen to the podcast for more than an episode, you'll know that I'm not a great fan of moss on top of the soil surface. It looks fantastic for a show. It looks brilliant. I love it. Yes, I agree. But when it comes to the watering of your bonsai, when it comes to having an idea of the moisture retention in the bonsai, moss can be very deceptive, very, very deceptive. It can make you think that things are great in summer when it's bone dry underneath, and it can hold excess moisture in the pots too and not allow for that water to evaporate out of the soil system that you've got for your bonsai. So over the winter period, first thing I look to do is, as it starts to grow in these damp environments, is just get rid of it. Just scratch it off. Make sure that the soil's able to breathe, that the root system's able to breathe, and that moss can hold in excess water and start to suffocate it. Another common thing that I've seen a hell of a lot lately when I work with trees that have any kind of stink about them, that root rot, is digging through the old roots, like I'm talking right back in the core of the tree, and looking for some original soil. the tree might have been field grown. It may have been slip potted at some point. It may have had whatever, but more often than not, I'm finding original mud in there and sometimes clay, like lumps of clay in there that really roots will not grow in that area of the tree, but it holds so much water and it seems to permeate around that area. So even though it might be isolated, the old soil to one area, I find that there's an expanded area around that particular area of the root ball that I see this rot starting to spread. So it's nasty. It's something that shouldn't be there. So you might find that the first year that you're working with a tree and repotting, going, well, I can't take off all that original soil. Fantastic, great. Don't get rid of it all in one hit. But next time you repot, it's got to be something that you're working towards to remove. Like it cannot be something that just gets left there forever. It's got to be something that is action because it's going to have an impact. And the longer the repotting frequency, then the worse that rot's going to get to. And I'll talk about a bit more about how to prevent in the next section of the podcast. All right, so we've talked about what root rot is and how to identify it. Those mushy brown roots that stink. They're probably the easiest ones to think of when you do it. You want a nice coloured root system, nicer, browner coloured, and you'll know it. When you come across root rot, you won't have to be tapped on the shoulder by someone to say, hey, I think you've got root rot. You're going to be, yep, that's definitely root rot. I know exactly what it is now because I know I struggled with it for years thinking, is that root rot? Are those roots too fine? Are they mushy? Have I done this? Have I done that? And then suddenly you get a tree that's got root rot and you go, oh, yeah, there it is. There's the stink. That's what everyone's been talking about. So if you haven't come across it, fantastic. Congratulations. But when you do come across it, you've got to do things. So common causes. The main thing really to consider is there's too much water staying around those roots and the tree's not taking it up. So therefore you're going to get a rot situation, a decay situation. So now it's like, how do we prevent it? So if we know what it is and how it's caused, then logically think about what we have to do. One of the first things I do when I get a tree that's got root rot is the most easy, simple fix I do is look at the pot. Is the pot suitable with drainage? 9 times out of 10, no, it's not. There might be one drainage hole and it might look great now. You might think that's more than enough for what I need. But when you jam roots into that pot and it's been there for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is that water going to be able to get out of that one hole that you've got there? And no, it won't. It definitely won't. So for the sake of a few bucks at a hardware store, I get a ceramic drill hole bit that's, let's say 20 mil wide, something like that, 25 mil, and punch an extra couple of holes in that pot. The more the merrier. When I start repotting, I get the drill out and I have it all ready to go. So it's not something I have to go, oh, I've got to get some more holes in the pot. All right, I'll do this, I'll do that. No. Once I get into repotting season, my drill basically stays there with the bit in it, ready to go. So it's nice and simple. It's quick and easy, and I have a position in my front yard where I have the tap running, so I can do it with a wet cut, so it doesn't burn dry. And literally, it's a couple of minutes to put in an extra couple of holes into a pot. I try and avoid it on very expensive pots, but very expensive pots are made by people who understand bonsai, who understand that we need drainage. We need tie-in points and we need drainage. And so I very rarely have to make holes in good, expensive, Japanese pots or whatever they are, because they're understood. But some of the other stuff, the generic sort of pots that I come across, I see it all the time where there's maybe one hole, possibly two. It's like, okay, if there's two and it's got a bit of a stink about it and there's a possibility of root rot, maybe it hasn't started yet because the repotting frequency's been up there. Well, is it something that maybe I should improve? Cool. Put in another 2 holes, make it 4 holes, a 4-hole pot, whatever it is. The more drainage that I get into the pots, the less frequent something like this becomes. And you'd never see it. Like the base of the pot, you never see it. And if you cut nice and slowly and get the technique right for putting those holes in there, you're not going to be damaging the pot. You really won't. If you just do it and take your time, maybe practice on something and look at some videos about how to do it, because there is a bit of a skill for the angle that you first make the cut and then rotate up to get the squareness of it. But doing it is something that's really quick, really easy, and makes a massive change to the tree. That air water transfer through the drainage of the pot, brilliant. Second one, you guessed it, soil mix. Soil mix makes a massive difference. Also, the drainage layer for the pot. So imagine having the root system of your bonsai sitting up higher and allowing that water to run through big scoria, something, let's say 20 millimeter scoria. What if the pot can handle it? So you don't want to have a pot that's only maybe 30 mil deep and then be putting 20 mil scoria in the bottom of it. It's just not going to work. But if you've got, a pot that's say, 10 centimeters deep and you can put in, 2 centimeters scoria at the bottom, then go for it. And it's just going to allow for that water to gently flood out of the root mass that you've got and drain away, which is, we want, things like black pines, they absolutely love water. They just don't want to be wet. And that applies to almost every single one of your trees. Things like Australian natives, a lot of those love to grow in water trays, and there's other trees definitely that love growing in water. I'm not denying that, but the vast majority of trees want that water to come in, use it, move it on. They don't want to stay in that state of being constantly wet, because otherwise you end up with root rot. So your soil mix that you're using, getting away from an organic mix, getting more towards a pumice scoria system, whatever it is, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever is going to work in your local area, whatever's going to do the job for you is great. But don't fall into the trap that I was, that I've talked about, which was moisture retention for your trees. Because if you're thinking about how much water can this soil mix hold, as opposed to how many roots can this soil mix grow, then you're on the wrong path. Because moisture retention, if you don't have a root system that can take up the moisture, then there's a world of problems. And that's where that switch from an organic, from the organic soil mix, potting mix, for want of a better word, going from potting mix to a bonsai mix, that grittier, pumice, scoria, really open sort of mix, that's where the problems occur, is that fine sediment that compacts, that holds the moisture that I talked about in the earlier section. That's where the vast majority comes from. But that's what's going to hold moisture. So if you're saying, oh, you don't understand, I need moisture there for summer. No, you don't. What you need is a really strong root system that when you water can get the water up into the tree's system a hell of a lot faster. And a pumice-based soil mix 100% of the time does that for you with a strong, healthy tree. And your strong, healthy tree is strong and healthy because of the root system that you've got. So you've got to get away from moisture retention for summer and think about root growth for summer. Get a fine feeder root system that is going to allow you to fertilize really well, get moisture into your trees, and not sit there and keep your root system wet and boggy, because the moisture retention that you're aiming for in summer is what's going to give you root rot when it comes to winter. So on one hand, what you're actively encouraging is going to be actively destroying the root system for your tree in a few seasons' time. So I think that you've got to get away from that. You need to have a balance. You need to have something where you can water frequently in summer and have a tree that can take it up, use it, but not sit there and stay constantly in that state of being extremely wet. Drainage layers are great. Like I said, it's like a pair of stilts for a house. It just lifts everything up, allows things to run through, and just allows it to work. So I think for me, they're the big takeaways: the soil mix, a drainage layer, and extra drainage for the tree, for the pot that you've got. So, and just keep an eye on the watering after you've identified root rot, after you've got in there and you've cut it out, removed it, you've ready to repot. You've put new drainage holes in the pot. You've got nice drainage layer, give or take. Like I said, I probably use drainage layer on 30-40% of my pots because they're just too shallow to accommodate a drainage layer. So don't feel that you have to use it 100% of the time. It's only an if it will work for the pot that you've got scenario. So once you've done that, you've got drainage layer, you've got a nice, more root growing soil mix, an open, less organic type scenario. Then you've tied the tree in really well. You flush it out with water, get rid of everything. Then I'd seriously think that you're on the path to recovery. But things like fungal issues can be something that need to be considered, and you might consider an application of a fungicide and maybe even a drench, like a dunking for the tree in a fungicide bath, just to make sure that it gets right into those areas that, let's say you haven't cut away all the rot yet for the root system and there's a little bit left. Maybe a nice quick bath in, maybe 3 or 4 weeks after having repotted. Once the root system gets up and going, then just do a fungicide dunk. Let it sit in the water for a couple of minutes, then pick it up, drain it out, and that should help knock things on the head and make sure that it's okay. But if you've got a scenario where, let's say, you've got a fair while until repotting time, you've smelt the root system, you've got that that stinks in there. It's like, well, what do? I can't rip this tree out of the pot and repot it. I can't break away that soil. You could temporarily slip pot it take it out without disturbing the roots and put it into, say, a bigger pot with just purely a drainage layer on it, like maybe massive pieces of scoria underneath and to the sides, just to allow that water to naturally drain off. That's a really good one. Aerating the soil too, allowing that water to evaporate and for air to get in there as well. Using something like a Phillips head screwdriver and just aerating it like you would a lawn system that's staying boggy wet. That definitely helps you as well. Maybe scratch away the top layer of soil, aerate it a little bit, and then put new soil back in on top. They're all temporary measures that you can do. If you're looking at the tree going, I'm still another month away from repotting, I don't want to go and do all this work when I'm going to take the tree out and repot it anyway, then getting the pot tilted onto a side, chucking a rock under one side, changing the water table for the pot so it's down one end of the pot as opposed to sitting right the way across, allows for that water to run off and drain a lot more readily than if it was just a flattened surface. So, and if you have had a tree that's suffered from root rot, then understand that there's a setback coming, that there's a cost for what's happened to the tree's system while it recuperates. And it's not the end of the world. I'm not saying it's the whole tree's going to die, but you might find that bits and pieces may start to die around the tree. Branches may die off. You might find that new spring growth is quite poor. Whatever it is, just maybe it might be worthwhile selectively pruning things back at about the same time as you're fixing the root rot on the foliage, just to lighten the load a little bit for the root system. So it's sort of like that. You're helping with the balance of root system to foliage, so the tree stays in check, and then the tree doesn't go, well, you know what, I'm going to let this branch die, and you go, well, that's my favourite branch. Don't let that one die. But if you just ease the stress on the whole tree, then you'll find that things will pretty much stay status quo. You might find the odd thing here and there, of course, but you're pretty much going to be managing the situation yourself by taking the load off the tree. And then from then on, just going forward, it's like having a sick or weakened tree, but you can't see the problem because it's below the soil. Just watch your watering. Make sure you're not overdoing it. Just gentle with the fertilizer. Just slowly introduce things. Work with sea salt. Give it maybe some plant starter, something to help with the shock of repotting as well. After repotting, just care for it in a way that you would a sick tree, and go, okay, well, I'm going to put you in partial sun. You're not going to get out into the hot elements. You're not going to get out into the frost. I'm just going to baby you for a little bit. And maybe that stays around for 6 months. Depends how it goes during the spring period. If spring takes off and you're looking at it going, gangbusters, this thing's doing great, lots of new growth, no dieback, everything's happy days, I don't know what Scott's talking about, then fantastic. Back to normal routine, keep going. But if you see things where things start to grow and then they start to die off, or you're seeing a lot of wilting of foliage, things just don't feel right with the tree, just keep it in that baby mode and get it through, because it really needs to build things back up. It needs that root system up and running and firing and really kicking along well before you get to the summer period. So it may be your pruning practices are slightly different as well. You might look at, instead of going up there and pinching the growth out as soon as it starts to appear, it might be, okay, well, I understand this thing's had root rot. I understand there's a bit of an impact. I've removed what I can. There may be more that have issues, more roots in there that have got a problem. I've done the fungal dunk. No worries, the fungicide dunk. So then I'm going to let this thing grow and then I'll come back and cut it. So it might be, September, spring starts growing, might get to later in spring, maybe another 6 weeks, 8 weeks down the track, and then come in and give it a cut, rather than getting out there after 3 days and giving it a cut. Just let things run their course. Let the root system rebuild, get back on top of things, and then come in and say, okay, now's the time. You're back on track. We're back to working with you exactly as what we were. So, like I said, probably not the most sexy thing to talk about when it comes to bonsai. There are far nicer topics, talking about flow and design and all the rest of it. But this is one of those. This is one of those practical podcasts that should help almost everyone that loves their trees, that comes across an issue, suddenly throw their hands in the air and go, well, I think I've done the right thing. Hopefully there's a few things in here that can maybe justify why we do things a certain way and make you look at things like pots a little bit differently to what you have in the past. I always wonder what non-bonsai people, and maybe some bonsai people, must think of me when someone says, I've got this problem with my tree, and I look at it and I put my head down and I start sniffing the root system. Must like, this guy's mad. This guy thinks he's a dog. But for me, like, seriously, it's a really strong telltale when you've got that rotten, stagnant water smell, and it's always, okay, take action. And it doesn't, like, it rears its ugly head, and I've seen it a lot lately, which is the reason for talking about it on the podcast, because I'm neck deep in repotting, which is when you get the best look at your trees. It's the most important thing you can do for your trees is repotting. But if you have issues and you're scratching your head going round and round in circles going, what is it? What's happened? What is happening to my tree? Why can't I get this thing to keep going forward? Why is it forward, backwards? It's invariably going to come from the root system. It could be maybe you're using all the perfect soil mix, but it's more about the frequency of repotting. Now, we talk about an open mix that water floods through and is great, and it's so easy to water after repotting. That same tree in 2-3 years' time becomes an absolute nightmare because the soil turns into a solid mass, like a brick, and getting water into it is very hard, and getting water out of it is very hard as well. So you just go round and round in circles. So like, bonsai is never about one thing. It's not just saying, okay, I've got good soil, I can forget everything else. It's like, okay, I've got good soil, but now I need good maintenance. I need to make sure that everything I'm doing is heading in the right direction. And frequency of repotting is one of the big ones that you've got to consider as well. Is it a 2-year cycle? Is it a 3-year cycle? Is it a 4-year cycle? Why? Why does it need to be one of those? Does it, why is 2-year better than 4-year? Why is 4-year better than 2-year? And I suppose that's a whole nother podcast somewhere down the track. But when it comes to root rot, one of the causes can be you've got a really good soil mix, but maybe the water's staying in there because the drainage holes are blocked, not enough drainage holes, or maybe it's just been too long between repotting. So the water just cannot get through that tree's system, and it just sits there and stagnates. So anyway, hopefully this has been one of those interesting ones that provides some kind of a how-to and a bit of an explanation on something which is, very, very unsexy. Essential to talk about, which is where most things don't happen in the world of bonsai. We talk about all the pretty stuff and the good stuff. We don't talk about the nitty-gritty, dirty stuff. But anyway, we've done it. Thanks for listening in. I want you to give your trees a big cuddle for me, especially if they've got root rot. Apologise to them and say that you will do everything in your power to make it better for them, and they will come out bigger, better, and stronger. And you'll be a better bonsai practitioner the other side of it, because you'll be able to identify it from here on out. You'll be able to look at the pot, pick up a few pointers, and say, okay, this was where I went wrong. This is where root rot was caused for this tree. Original soil mix, old soil clay in there, holes in the bonsai pot, repotting frequency, block drainage holes, blah, 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 all the stuff that we talked about. So hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for listening in. I do love all you bonsai nutbags. You make me smile and make me very happy doing what I'm doing every single day of the week. Until next time, happy bonsai.